2023 Armijo High School Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Thank you, good night. My name's Tony Wade, I'm from the class of 1982. Now, as a reminder, please turn off or silence your cell phones. Bathrooms, when you leave here, you make a right, go all the way down the hallway, and that's where the bathrooms are at. If there is an emergency, please get out of my way. Let me get out of here. Okay. So we have a special guest to acknowledge. We have the current principal of Armijo High School, Mr. John McMorris, right there in the back. Thank you for coming. And we also have some students from Armijo who are filming this for us. Let's give it up for them. Thanks so much for coming. All right, so Mr. McMorris came and the downtown theater staff has graciously set up a makeshift principal's office. So in case y'all start acting up, we know where to send you, all right? So I want to introduce the rest of the board of directors of the Armijo Alumni Association to you. So first, that's me, and those white tuxes are coming back into style. Gordine Painovi from the class of 1960. Kim Moore from the class of 1980. Councilman Scott Tonneson from the class of 1980. And from the class of 1959, one name, Nancy Ann, like shit. Also, Gordine's husband, Ron Painovi, he was from the Vallejo class of Vallejo Apache from 1960, but he's been adopted as an alumnus of Armijo as well. So, we're glad you're all here. This has been a long and wonderful process to get to this point. This whole thing started in February 2013 at a board meeting at Ron and Gordine's house where I floated the idea. Then in 2014, I had a talk with Irving Seibel from the class of 1977. And he was talking about, why don't we have a dinner for some of these teachers while they're still around? We talked about that. And we finally did it in 2015. Please join me in thanking Dave Spearing from the class of 1992, the general manager of the Downtown Theater and the artistic director of the multiple award-winning theater troupe Missouri Street Theater for helping us make this possible. Also, shout outs and fist bumps to Jim Engelbright from the class of 1979 for his generous contributions to help us defray expenses. Our photographer, who you may have seen out there, is the lovely and talented Yumi Wilson from the class of 1983. And the lion's share of your ticket prices will go to scholarships for future students, so give yourselves a big round of applause as well. So now, by a show of hands, how many of you know the Armijo High School hymn or Alma Mater song? Okay, put your hands down. Now, how many of you do not know it? Okay, put your hands down. Well, how many of you will this be the first time you've heard it? That should be the same people as answered the second question. The same question. All right, so, if it's not inconvenient for you, you don't have to, but please stand. And we're gonna have the class of 1973 grad and 2023 inductee into the Hall of Fame, Barbara McFadden, sing the Armijo High School hymn, or Alma Mater song. And here's Barbara.
Yay, Barbara.
Give it up for Barbara.
Oh, so good to see everyone. I'll sing it through. Sing with me, if you want. And then everybody has to sing. Okay? Here we go. Hail, Armijo, hail. Hail, purple and gold. Onward to victory. Behind our Indians bold. Forward we go. We will not fail. Sing to our alma mater. Hail, hail, hail. So, now you need to outsing me. Here we go. Ready? Hail.
hand together for Barbara. Thank you so much, Barbara. All right. Be seated, please. Thank you. Okay, here's a quick overview of Armijo history. Armijo High School was started September 4th, 1891 with only one teacher the first year, and they met upstairs at Crystal School in Sioux City. The curriculum included Latin, English, mathematics, history, and computer science. Just kidding. The first Armijo structure was a wooden Queen Anne style building that was constructed in 1893 on land that was deeded by Fairfield founder Robert Waterman. The first graduating class was that year. In 1915, the new Armijo was built with reinforced concrete, which is now the Solano County Hall of Justice, replaced it. With the growth of Fairfield, fueled in part by Travis Air Force Base, the new school on Washington Street was officially dedicated in 1961. Now, if you knew all that, give yourselves an A. If you didn't know any of that, give yourself an F. If you knew some of that, and you just copied the rest from your neighbor's paper, report to Mr. McMorris's office. Okay. So, one last thing before we move forward. I think it's both fitting and appropriate that we have a respectful moment of silence for all the people we are inducting and remembering who are no longer with us. So please, let's do that right now. Thank you. And now, we'll have a look back on the inaugural class of 2015. So we started out with some special inductees, and the first of those was Jose Francisco Armijo. Now, Jose Francisco Armijo held one of the 6 Mexican land grants of Solano County just before California became part of the United States. Armijo came from Mexico with his 4 sons in 1839. He died 10 years later, leaving his land to his son Antonio and his wife Maria Jesus. The famous poet Edwin Markin, who grew up in Lagoon Valley, said of Armijo several years after his death that he was one of those rare spirits that the years could not touch with age, a being that never outgrew the eager heart of boyhood. Jose Francisco Armijo, the school's namesake, was the first inductee into the Armijo High School Hall of Fame. Then we inducted the co-founders of the Armijo Alumni Association. The roots of the Armijo Alumni Association can be traced back to an alumni get-together in 1956 at the Farm Bureau Center. The members who showed up to that function signed a guest book, and this is the page from it. The Armijo Alumni Association formed in the 10 days after the July 4th shindig celebrating Armijo's centennial back in 1991. Those co-founders are known affectionately as the Magnificent Seven. They were Jeannie Mariano, class of 1948, Elaine Serpis, class of 1947, Tim Farmer, class of 1971, David Mariano, class of 1952, Kathy Downey Mariano, class of 1958, Corrine Painovi, class of 1960, and Nancy Ann Gregg, class of 1959. So here are some of the other inductees, and we're going to start with Virginia Arvin. Vacaville High School grad nurse Virginia Arvin was a fixture at Armijo High School for decades. She was there when Nancy Ann was there in 1959, and when I was there in 1982. Her entire tenure was from 1947 to 1986. Robert Briggs. Robert Briggs became the band director at Armijo in 1955 and built the then struggling high school band into a renowned music program. He later became the Cal band director for nearly 30 years, and after retirement, he formed the Solano Winds Community Concert Band that's still going strong and actually performs here. James Brown Lee. James Erskine Brown Lee came to Armijo in 1921 and served as principal longer than anyone until 1949. In 1955, the year of his death, the football field at the school was renamed in his honor. Doug Butt, the running man. From July 31st, 1964 to December 31st, 2004, he logged 75,277 miles running. Doug Butt was a longtime physical education teacher, an umpire, soccer referee, distance runner extraordinaire, across the street neighbor from me, by the way, and he coached cross country at Armijo, among other things. His legacy lives on in the annual Doug Butt Run. Ivan Collier, easily one of the most beloved instructors at Armijo High School ever, longtime social sciences teacher Ivan Collier started the Cadet Corps program at Armijo in 1956, which was the precursor to the Air Force ROTC program. Tim Farmer, class of 1971 grad Tim Farmer is the only alumnus thus far inducted twice. First as the co-founder of the Armijo Alumni Association, and as a much beloved teacher and local historian. The legacy of Tim Farmer is right here today. You are a part of the branches and fruit of seeds that he and others planted and nurtured decades ago. Matt Garcia. Class of 2004's Matt Garcia was one of those people, he made bold predictions, and then he lived up to them. So many people gave him no chance when he ran for city council, but then he became the youngest councilman in the state of California when he won. He was taken so tragically, and yet out of that unspeakable horror, beauty and light has continued to grace the community through the work of the Matt Garcia Foundation. Ed Hopkins. Class of 1933 grad Ed Hopkins returned to Armijo as a coach, and between 1940 and 1975, his basketball, football, track and field, and baseball teams captured, wait for it, 31 championships. In basketball, he was especially awesome. Before retiring in 1975, his teams had secured 509 victories against 350 losses. How great a coach was he? Well, former student athletes that he coached, who themselves became coaches, include more than 35 people. Nori Pat Morita. Pat Morita achieved fame in the 1960s as a stand-up comedian, and then in the 70s for playing Matsuo Arnold Takahashi, owner of a diner on the hit TV show Happy Days. Morita is probably best known for playing Mr. Miyagi in the 1984 motion picture The Karate Kid and its sequels, a role for which he was nominated for the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. E. Gary Vaughn. Eugene Gary Vaughn was senior class president in his graduating year of 1959 and a member of the Teachers of Tomorrow Club. He later returned to his alma mater after college to teach and coach. He was well-liked, involved, and caring. All the qualities he had shown as a leader while in school, he brought with him to the sphere of teaching. Tragically, Vaughn's life was cut short in 1972, and that December, the gymnasium where he had played and coached was dedicated in his honor. Daryl Anderson. While other Armijo staff members wore jackets and ties, and ain't nothing wrong with that, English teacher and department head Daryl Anderson was definitely more of a jeans type of guy. And he once taught a class called Social Protest. Mr. Anderson was described as laid back, literally. Sometimes he held classes outdoors under a tree near the annex and allowed students to lie down on the grass while going over an assignment. Guido Cola. Guido Cola graduated from Armijo in 1942 and married his wife Rosie in 1948 after returning from World War II. In 1949, he began his career in education. He taught at Crystal School, was a principal of Tolinas, and was superintendent of several school districts. In addition to his educational career, Guido was on the Suisun City Council for 22 years and served as mayor. Guido Cola was a lifelong baseball lover, and he hit a ball past 16 consecutive Gold Glove winner Brooks Robinson in a charity game with Huey Lewis and the News. His feat was featured in Sports Illustrated, but Guido always bemoaned the fact that it was in the swimsuit issue, so people didn't notice it. Johnny Cola. Huey Lewis and the News songwriter, singer, sax player, guitarist Johnny Cola wrote or co-wrote many songs y'all know, like Heart and Soul, I Want a New Drug, Working for a Living, Do You Believe in Love, Hip to Be Square, and so many more. The famous part of the song, The Heart of Rock and Roll, where Huey Lewis yells out Johnny's name before he breaks into a wailing sax solo, well, that could not have happened without the help of Armijo Superband director Ray Lindsay, who first put his sax in Johnny's hands. Oh, went too far. Ron Cortez. Ron Cortez always had a love of sports and played many, including softball. He got into coaching and coached just about every sport there is, but wrestling had a special place in his heart. That's because it's the only sport where the competitors are of equal size. Cortez would see these 5'2", 98-pound guys at Armijo and ask them if the football or basketball coach would talk to them. And when they said no, he'd say, well, I've got a place for you. Under Cortez's tutelage, the Indians had several lightweight wrestlers that excelled, including John Silva and Joe Taylor. And of course, Michael Berger, but we'll get to him a little later. Jay Dahl. Jay Dahl was an outstanding basketball player while at Fairfield High, and his coach was Armijo class of 1950 grad Ron Thompson. Dahl set school records that still stand. Coach Dahl taught at Bransford Elementary and also coached JV and varsity basketball at Armijo, and later became athletic director. Dahl was fair and tough and cared about his young charges. Some teams struggled, like the one I was on, and some were successful, and in 1983, he was Monticello Empire League Coach of the Year. Gary Filati, class of 1958 grad, student body president, lifeguard, teacher, coach, assistant principal, city councilman, mayor of Fairfield, school board member. If we listed all the things that Gary Filati accomplished, it would just take too long. Okay, we ain't gonna be here all day. He was, yes. He's been honored in numerous ways, including having a street and a park named after him. In short, he is the unofficial Mr. Fairfield. Yeah. Philip Glasshoff. The Glasshoff name figures prominently in Fairfield and Suisun Valley history. They were butchers and ranchers, and using his fertile imagination and blowtorches, Philip Glasshoff, in the class of 1969, added another dimension to his family's legacy: art. He used what some would throw away, like old fire extinguishers, compressor covers, and motorcycle tanks, and made whimsical sculptures out of them. You see some of them in the lobby out there. Ray Lamphere. When Ray Lamphere took over as principal of Armijo, one of the things he tried to do was boost school spirit by reviving some of the traditions and culture of the past that had been mothballed. He brought back the spirit bell, which he found in a storage closet. It was a metal bell on a cart that was rang when the Armijo football team scored a touchdown. Ray Lamphere was a wrestling coach, assistant principal, and is a repository of knowledge about so much Fairfield Unified School District history. I mean the juicy behind the scenes stuff. Candace Leitner. Candace Doddridge Leitner came to the Fairfield area, as many did, because her father was stationed at Travis Air Force Base. She only attended Armijo her junior and senior years, but she was the yearbook editor in 1964, the year that she graduated. Now, as an adult, Leitner lived every parent's nightmare when on May 3rd, 1980, her daughter Carrie was killed by a chronic drunk driver. Leitner was devastated, and even more so when she learned how lenient drunk driving laws were back then. She formed Mothers Against Drunk Driving later that same year. A major triumph was the National Minimum Drinking Age Act of 1984 that Leitner was able to witness being signed into law by then President Ronald Reagan. Ray Lindsay. While taking nothing away from many of the other people who had been band directors at Armijo, under Ray Lindsay's direction from 1968 to 1978, mild-mannered students were shown that through discipline, practice, determination, and teamwork, they could become bigger as a unit than the sum of their parts. They could become super. Whether they were winning sweepstakes in Ukiah or playing at the halftime of San Francisco 49er games, the Armijo Super Band always showed up and were a powerful musical force to be reckoned with. Rebecca Lum. Rebecca Lum, who was born, raised, and went to college in San Francisco, taught at Armijo High from 1958 to 1991. Before she came to Armijo, she had a very difficult time finding a job because her major was science, and in those days, being an Asian and a woman was looked upon as having 2 strikes. She did get a job teaching in San Carlos, but could not live there because she was not white. The diverse student body of Armijo was a blessing for Lund. She in turn was a blessing to her students, some of whom decades later still lavish effusive praise on her for her contribution she made to their lives as a teacher and coach. George Martin. Many of class of 1971 grad George Martin's classmates have fond memories of him as an exceptionally gifted student athlete who excelled on the football field and basketball court. Martin was named student body president and also was dubbed an outstanding teenager of America. Now, for those who had the unfortunate assignment of lining up against him on Sundays when he was a defensive end for the New York Giants from 1975 to 1988, the memories are probably not so fun. Still others that did not go to school with him or play with him, or maybe they're like me, who in grade school, middle school, and high school had this enormous man with this inviting smile come talk to them and show them a film strip of him getting an interception and talked about setting and achieving goals. And he still does that too, by the way. Alex Scher. Alex Scher taught at Armijo from 1965 to 1989 and developed a rapport with students by reinforcing his primary rule in the classroom: be civil to others at all times. Decades later, many point to Scher, as I do, as their favorite teacher because he treated his students as young adults. He was fair and a great teacher. And he didn't tell my mom when he found me reading a Playboy magazine in the class. I was reading the articles. It's very interesting. All right. Dr. Sam Tracus. Dr. Sam Tracus' first year teaching at Armijo in 1954 was eventful. That year, the school board fired a teacher and a vice principal, and the students went on strike. The story was picked up by the wire services and went national. But Tracus replaced the teacher who was fired and was asked to help improve communications between the school district and the community. Tracus later became the very first principal of the then new Fairfield High School. He spent 40 years in the school district, and the Sam Tracus Administration Building was dedicated in his honor at Fairfield High on May 6, 2006. And that is our inductees. So let's give a big round of applause. Now, before we move into enshrining the 2023 posthumous inductees, I want to ask, does anybody remember that show, This Is Your Life? Remember that? Yeah, they have people come and they talk about oh, this is your Aunt Sally, and she come out and say, oh my God, I haven't heard them forever. And it said this whole thing. That's not what we're doing today. We're not doing that. Yeah, we're not doing that. This is not your life, okay? We got 26 inductees, so I'm just going to. So, and let's go into class now. The word of the day is brevity. And what brevity means is, it's the quality of expressing much in few words. So, all right. So after I give some introductory remarks, families of the inductees or designated spokespeople are invited to say a few words. I'm going to ask that you keep it to 5 minutes. And I'm not subtle. Okay, so you'll hear me coughing. Brevity. All right, so please be mindful, we have a lot of inductees. And your cue to wrap it up will be me slowly walking to the podium. That's going to be your cue. All right, so, and now, before we do this, when we bring people up, if you want to come up, I'd rather you not walk up the stairs in the dark. If you can go around to that door right there. Scott, can you open that up? All right, can we open that up? We'll show you what we're talking about here. Go right here and then come through that door and come to the back and come through the stage. See Scott over there in that corner? Yeah, come to that door and come through the back and we will come on stage. That'd be great. All right? Thank you so much. Give it up for Scott for opening the door. Come on, man.
Good job.
We didn't even rehearse that. All right. All right, let's do this. There's the Armijo High School Hall of Fame of 2023. And here are the posthumous inductees. Carrol Buck Bailey. Class of 1933 grad Ed Hopkins has rightfully gotten his due as a legendary coach. But his predecessor, who was also his high school coach at Armijo, Carrol A. Buck Bailey, has not. Now, all the pictures that are survived of Buck Bailey, they show a very Clark Kent looking guy. But make no mistake, when he put that coach's whistle around his neck, people started saying, look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's, you know the rest. And the numbers do not lie. Football was introduced at Armijo by Principal James Brown Lee in 1926, and he coached the team until 1930. When Bailey took over, they peeled off 10 straight winning campaigns in the 1930s, including 4 undefeated seasons and 5 Solano County Athletic League crowns. Armijo's overall record under Bailey's mentorship was 58 wins, 17 losses, and 10 ties. The football pinnacle was the 1936 squad. The 1936 Armijo football team gave up just 12 points all season, only 6 by the first team defense, and had 7 shutouts, including 5 straight to end the season. Beyond the numbers, evidently Carrol Buck Bailey was a swell guy. And in 1934, the graduating class dedicated the La Mezcla yearbook to Bailey, citing his dynamic personality and ceaseless toil that inspired them in sportsmanship and fair play in school games and the game of life. Bailey's coaching influence and mark on Armijo was carried on and then eclipsed by Hopkins, whose tenure was 3 times as long in Fairfield. But Bailey added an indelible feature to the school in a different way. In 1929, his first year at Armijo, Buck Bailey organized the Block A Society, whose stated goal was to increase interest in sports. One of the first actions by the society that year was choosing the school's symbol, the Armijo Indian, which remained for 90 years. Please join me in welcoming Carrol Buck Bailey into the Armijo High School Hall of Fame. Emil, Senior Grandmaster Emil Bautista. Back in the 1950s at Armijo, Emil Bautista was a member of the Pizzerino Boys. That's the response we usually get. They have been characterized as jocks and pranksters who have remained friends from their high school days, and today, 4 of them are being inducted into the Hall of Fame. While he later earned the title of Kajikembo Senior Grandmaster, back in high school, his friends gave him the nickname Tools. Gary Drummond was one of the ringleaders of the Pizzerino Boys, and he told the story of how Emil got his nickname. He said, we had a night football game at Armijo arch enemy Benicia, and we had duffel bags with our pads, and Coach Hopkins walked by and accidentally brushed against Emil's bag, and it made a metallic clanking sound. He asked, what's in there? And Emil straightened up and said, tools. It was a tire chain and a machete. In 1961, Emil had a job refilling vending machines at Travis Air Force Base, and one day in the gymnasium, he heard hollering and traced the sounds back to their source, and it was instructor Aleju Reyes and 2 airmen practicing Kajikembo. They invited Bautista to try it out, and he accepted. Later, at a different job, he was walking by the old Greyhound bus station on Jefferson Street over there, and he heard the same type of yelling he had heard on base. It was coming from the Kajikembo school run by Tony Ramos.